The Sinner, written by Tess Gerritsen, narrated by Taylor Patout. Prologue. Andhra Pradesh, India. The driver refused to take him any farther. A mile back, right after they passed the abandoned Octagon chemical plant, the pavement had given way to an overgrown dirt road. Now the driver complained that his car was getting scraped by underbrush, and with the recent rains, there were muddy spots where their tires could get mired. And where would that leave them? Stranded 150 kilometers from Hyderabad. Howard Redfield listened to the long litany of objections and knew they were merely a pretext for the real reason the driver did not wish to proceed. No man easily admits that he is afraid. Redfield had no choice. From here, he would have to walk. He leaned forward to speak in the driver's ear and caught a gamey whiff of the man's sweat. In the rear-view mirror, where rattling beads dangled, he saw the driver's dark eyes staring at him. "You'll wait here for me, won't you?" Redfield asked. "Stay right here, on the road." "How long?" "An hour, maybe. As long as it takes. I tell you, there's nothing to see. No one is there anymore. Just wait here, okay? Wait. I'll pay you double when we get back to the city." Redfield grabbed his knapsack, stepped out of the air-conditioned car, and was instantly swimming in a sea of humidity. He hadn't worn a knapsack since he was a college kid, wandering through Europe on a shoestring, and it felt a little would-be at age 51 to be slinging one over his flabby shoulders. But he was damned if he went anywheres in the steam house of a country without his bottle of purified drinking water and his insect repellent and his sunscreen and diarrhea medicine. And his camera. He could not leave behind the camera. Great, the sun is going down and all the mosquitoes come out at dusk. Here comes dinner, you little buggers. He set off down the road. Tall grass obscured the path, and he stumbled into a rut, his walking shoes sinking ankle-deep in mud. Clearly, no vehicle had come this way in months, and Mother Nature had quickly moved in to reclaim her territory. He paused, panting and swatting at insects. Glancing back, he saw that the car was no longer in sight, and that made him uneasy. Could he trust the driver to wait for him? The man had been reluctant to bring him this far, and had grown more and more nervous as they bounced along the increasingly rough road. Bad people were out here, the driver had said, and terrible things happened in this area. They could both disappear, and who would bother to come looking for them? Redfield pressed onward. The humid air seemed to close in around him. He could hear the water bottle sloshing in his knapsack, and already he was thirsty, but he did not stop to drink. With only an hour or so left of daylight, he had to keep moving. Insects hummed in the grass, and he heard what he thought must be birds calling in the canopy of trees all around him. But it was unlike any bird song he ever heard before. Everything about this country felt strange and surreal, and he trudged in a dreamlike trance, sweat trickling down his chest. The rhythm of his own breathing accelerated with each step. It should be only a mile and a half, according to the map, but he seemed to walk forever, and even a fresh application of insect repellent did not discourage the mosquitoes. His ears were filled with their buzzing, and his face was an itching mask of hives. He stumbled into another deep rut and landed on his knees in tall grass, spat out a mouthful of vegetation as he crouched there, catching his breath, so discouraged and exhausted that he decided it was time to turn around, to get back on that plane to Cincinnati with his tail tucked between his legs. Cowardice, after all, was far safer and more comfortable. He heaved a sigh, planted his hand on the ground to push himself to his feet, and went very still, staring down at the grass. Something gleamed there among the green blades, something metallic. It was only a cheap tin button, but at that moment, it struck him as a sign, a talisman. He slipped it in his pocket, rose to his feet, and kept walking. Only a few 100 feet farther, the road suddenly opened up into a large clearing, encircled by tall trees. A lone structure stood at the far edge, a squat cinder block building with a rusting tin roof. Branches clattered and grass waved in the gentle wind. This is the place, he thought. This is where it happened. His breathing suddenly seemed too loud. Heart pounding, he slipped off the knapsack, unzipped it, and pulled out his camera. Document everything, he thought. Octagon will try to make you out as a liar. They will do everything they can to discredit you, so you have to be ready to defend yourself. You have to prove that you are telling the truth. He moved into the clearing, towards a heap of blackened branches. Nudging the twigs with his shoe, he stirred up the stench of charred wood. He backed away, a chill crawling up his spine. It was the remains of a funeral pyre. With sweating hands, he took off his lens cap and began to shoot photos. Eye pressed to the viewfinder, he snapped image after image. The burned remains of a hut, a child's sandal lying in the grass, a bright fragment of cloth torn from a sari. Everywhere he looked, he saw death. He swung to the right, a tapestry of green sweeping past his viewfinder, and was about to click off another photo when his finger froze on the button. A figure skittered past the edge of the frame. He lowered the camera from his eye and straightened, staring at the trees. He saw nothing now, only a sway of branches. There, was that a flash of movement at the very periphery of his vision? He caught only a glimpse of something dark, bobbing among the trees. A monkey? He had to keep shooting. The daylight was going fast. He walked past a stone well and crossed towards the tin-roofed building, his pants swishing through the grass, glancing left and right as he moved. The trees seemed to have eyes, and they were watching him. As he drew near the building, he saw that the walls were scorched by fire. In front of the doorway was a mound of ashes and blackened branches, another funeral pyre. He stepped around it and looked into the doorway. At first, he could make out very little in that gloomy interior. Daylight was rapidly fading, and inside it was even darker. A palette of blacks and grays. He paused for a moment as his eyes adjusted. With growing bewilderment, he registered the glint of fresh water in an earthenware jar. The scent of spices. How could this be? Behind him, a twig snapped. He spun around. A lone figure was standing in the clearing. All around them, the trees had gone still, and even the birds were silent. The figure came toward him, moving with a strange and jerky gait, until it stood only a few feet away. The camera tumbled from Redfield's hands. He backed away, staring in horror. It was a woman, and she had no face. This is the end of the preview. Excerpt from The Sinner. Produced by Joshua Souza, Jason Baretto, and Mariya Chsheglova. Recorded at SAE Institute Dubai. This audiobook was recorded for educational purposes only. Thank you. The end.